Good morning. So, we're going to end our mystic series with someone who's very familiar to us, Therese of Lisieux. And the focus of this morning's reflection and meditation is her own experience of what we call, some of us call, the mystical body of Christ. Now, the understanding of the mystical body of Christ is that the actual body of God, the actual body of God, is made up of many realms and many relationships. So the body of Christ is not just us here on this earth, it's also spiritual beings and individuals of other realms, those that were on earth, those that have never been on earth, but they all form a working body. And it's believed that this working body has an interdependency to it. So I wanted to take 3 instances from her life that show forth her own understanding of the mystical body of Christ. And because she had a very sophisticated, she didn't preach about the mystical body of Christ, but she's a very sophisticated experience of the mystical body of Christ. So the first one is the most straightforward one. At a certain point in her life, she suffers scruples. And scruples is a very debilitating, I suffered it once for a short period of time, very, very debilitating state of mind where you feel almost paralyzed. It feels like any and everything about you is incapable of good, and you become incredibly scrupulous about even very, very tiny things. And it's very painful. If you've never suffered from it, I hope you never will. It's just the result of an incredible amount of unhealed self-judgment. And then it results in feeling that anything you do, even picking up a glass of water, that anything you do has something tainted about it. So it can really paralyze you. And she turned to one of her sisters for help. And this sister would give her things to do and tell her what to do and what not to do. But her sister was never able to help her heal of it. So her sister helped her not be debilitated, but was not able to help her heal. And what she ended up doing was turning to her siblings, who she says were in heaven. So her mom had more than just the 5 of them, the 5 girls. And some died from miscarriage, some died in childbirth. And Therese decided, well, they've got the best leverage, so I'm going to turn to them and beg them to help me, beg them to help me. And it was not long after that her entire issue was completely relieved. So she turned to these siblings, she leaned into them, she felt that they were connected to the all-powerful and were all-powerful, and then she really entrusted her issue to them. And very, very quickly, if not immediately, she was healed of the scruples. So it gives us one example of the mystical body of Christ. A second example, her relationship with known and unknown individuals in her own order is very layered. At one point, she went to bed and she had a little bit of a worry that her little path of confidence and love, that it wasn't pleasing to God. No, she lived, as we know, she lived in a period of time that was very influenced by Montism and Jansenism. Jansenism, its foundation is that the human being is unworthy and must do a lot of penance and reparation. And Montism was a very extreme devotion to the Pope. So there's kind of that hierarchy where you really don't believe in yourself very much either. And in her monastery, she had all the traditional practices there, but she recognized that that way wasn't for her, that way didn't work for her. And she believed that she was little, and she was called to get littler and littler every day, every moment. And in that, she would find it very easy to be sitting on God's lap. So her path to perfection was to grow littler and littler and have just such confidence that it will be done for her, that it will be. Now, isn't that similar to some of the teachings we hear about the law of attraction and that, right? If we hold the belief strong enough, it will simply happen effortlessly. Well, she goes to sleep one night, and there are 3 Carmelites with veils over their faces in her sleep. And I believe she recognized one of them, but she did not recognize them all. Well, one of them came over to her, not the one she recognized, and pulled up the veil like this. And immediately Therese had an experience of the unconditional love coming to her through this person she didn't even know. And then that nun puts the veil over Therese as well. So they're like in a little tent together in this veil. And the experience with this, and I think it might have been St. Anne of St. Bartholomew, I think. The experience of this was so strong that Therese automatically had the level of trust to ask, is God pleased with me? So here she was able, with somebody else in this mystical way that she didn't know, but could experience the love in so strongly. She had the freedom to express her real heart of worry. And this mystic and saint, and this person who was not informed, who lived probably about 400 years before Therese, said to her, oh, yes, God is very pleased with you. Wow, right? It gave Therese wings to fly even more confidently upon her path. So another example, a different view, a different angle. And it didn't come forward because she said, I believe in this. And then she applied herself. It came forward because she had this natural connectivity. And this connectivity went beyond her 5 senses. So the last one that I want to point out that is another look at mystical body, something she reveals to us, and something for which she's actually esteemed as a doctor of the church. It's one of the things that contributed to her being proclaimed a doctor. And that is when she decides that her vocation is love. Now, if you remember the passage, or if you know the passage, she was having intense desires to be so many things. She wanted to be a martyr, and she wanted to be a priest, and she wanted to be a missionary, and she wanted to be a virgin, and she wanted to be everything you could imagine. She was on fire with it. And she had the belief that if she was on fire with it, that it was meant to be. And so she threw herself into it. How can this be? How can I desire to be all these vocations and be I don't know how old she was at the time, a 20-year-old nun in a cloistered community? How could this be? And it wasn't, should it be? And it wasn't, am I in alignment? It was her simplicity was so great that when she keyed into the desire, 100% was, this is meant to be. This is meant to be. So then the question is just how? And you know, it's interesting, it's coming to me right now, is this brings us full circle in our series, because the opening, after my live event, the opening was Mary Theotokos. And we were in the same situation where Mary's simplicity and belief were so strong. She simply had the curiosity, how is this going to be? to which Gabriel could reveal so much more. I'll read for you the quote that ended up satisfying her. I feel in me the vocation of the priest. I have the vocation of the apostle. Martyrdom was the dream of my youth, and this dream has grown with me. Considering the mystical body of the church, I desire to see myself in them all. Charity gave me the key to my vocation. I understood that the church had a heart, and that this heart was burning with love. I understood that love comprised all vocations, that love was everything, that it embraced all times and places. In a word, that it was eternal. Then, in the excess of my delirious joy, I cried out, "Oh, Jesus, my love, my vocation, at last I have found it. My vocation is love." Now, what's additionally interesting about that is that she had answered a vocation to be a Carmelite. So in a way, she wasn't even recognizing that she was living out a vowed life, a vocation, where she could have taken another path. She was so fluid in her connection with her desires and them being of God that she was open to even more. And in that, then she discovers her real vocation. Now, I realize in some circles this thought could be heretical, but you will see that in her experience of the mystical body, it's always couched within her cultural and religious beliefs. It doesn't really go outside of that. It's her siblings, her fellow Carmelites, and what she claims the vocations within the church. So her construct is there. What would it have been like if her construct was even broader than that? Like those of us, part of Essence Tribe, who are open to the influence of mystics of other traditions, who are aware there are many more realms than what we know, many planes of consciousness that we may or may not know. We are open in our culture and in our beliefs to a broader base that we can call mystical body. And do we open ourselves to it? Do we open ourselves to it? In the ways that Therese did. I mean, with those three instances, she threw herself into the trust of what was happening, period. She didn't have any conditions there. What about you and me? So we have an opportunity in our relationship to mystical body to inaugurate and to grow friendships of such diverse fashion, and friendships that are there to help us and to help humanity. So with that, I invite you to close your eyes. And as we are connected here in this call, those on the call right now, those tending our practice later, we know there's a connectivity. Even if we're not in the same room, the same time zone, the same period of the day when we practice, we know there is a connectivity. So we open up in the silence for a minute to embrace and to recognize that connectivity. And now we open ourselves to the realms of angels and archangels. Recognize, celebrate, invite them in these moments of silence. Maybe even call out in your own room, Uriel, Michael, Josiah, Gabriel, Raphael. Call out to them all. Invite them in to care for you. And now we invite in all the deities, all the gods and goddesses of all paths, all traditions, all knowing, all unknowing. And we invite in all guides, all shamans, all ancestors. Invite them in silently or verbally, or celebrate them being here. Your guides, my guides, all of the shamanic calling, all the medicine men and women, the priests and priestesses, the prophets, the seers, the clairvoyants, the clairaudience, all ancestors. We invite you all in. And we invite in all spiritual beings, known and unknown, seen and unseen, all saints, Therese, all the mystics that have been a part of our series. We celebrate, acknowledge, invite you in, and ask you to help us awaken as well. Now I invite you in this silence to entrust some part of yourself, just like Therese did, something that's within you. Question, longing. and in the experience of all our mystical friends that together we make up a mystical body of the divine. And in this, we bring our immersion to a close. But I invite you, instead of ending this very short practice, to continue with it today. Walk with all these friends. Om Namah Shivaya Gurave Satchidananda Mudaye Nishprapanchaya Shandaya Niralambaya Tejase. Om Namah Shivaya Gurave Satchidananda Mudaye Nishprapanchaya Shandaya Niralambaya Tejase. Ready, draw your palms together in front of your heart. And open your eyes with Namaste. Namaste, my friend.